Kephart. I'm the principal and lead ecologist here at Rana. We are a multidisciplinary team of biologists and ecologists, landscape architects. The company is 29 years old. We've been at it a while, and great clients, really lovely people to work with. We are passionate about our work. I think what differentiates the work that we do is primarily we come from an ecological background, but I'm a botanist and biologist, and I consult in both of those fields as well as in land use. So we cover a lot of different disciplines, however, rooted in the land and nature-based design.
Yeah. It's not necessarily strictly landscape architecture, right? You've brought in those different elements, the biology portion, a lot of the science from what I'm seeing into your work. What well, I guess my first question is, was that your training, your background in biology in that field? How did that lead to landscape architect? I mean, I do see a path, but how was that for you?
It's really an interesting backstory. I'm really an artist. I'm a naturalist painter.
Okay.
And I lived in the wilderness in the Big Sur Coast for 24 years. And when I was there, I met David Packard of Hewlett Packard that was building a home there. And he had properties and an interest in restoration ecology. And he knew my passion and my advocation at the time was botany and biology and natural history.
Yeah.
So I really focused a lot of my early career development around the science and the art and how to combine both. And Dave had several projects where he needed people to help him with the restoration of natural landscapes. And back in 1980 or so, he
Sure.
had bought a piece of property in Elkhorn Slough. At the time, there was 750,000 metric tons of DDT laden soil from all the intensive agriculture. And I set about learning about native grassland restoration. I started to lecture at Davis, Berkeley, and other campuses. And I really applied myself in terms of the science of agronomy, restoration, ecology. And this was at a time, where the native plant development of that discipline and landscape architecture was really, start and drought tolerant, all those kind of issues were driving landscape architecture. And then I pivoted and I started this little company. We had a nursery. We went out and we did installations. I was consulting. And then I pivoted and after many years of working with Dave, I went to work for another Silicon Valley person, Mike Markla, who was the young engineer at Fairchild, and he gave Jobs and Wozniak the startup for Apple.
Okay.
And he had a real interest in technology, and he had an interest in this business, and I managed his 14,000-acre Rana Creek Ranch, thus the name Rana Creek. The company belonged to him. I managed it, but things started to change because I began to apply the science of restoration ecology, the natural principles of function and process. We're elemental in our design around water, energy, waste, habitat, human health and well-being. And I began to apply that in the urban world. And I saw that as a new frontier for my own career development as well as the company. And I had an opportunity to work with Bill McDonough early on the Gap corporate campus. Then all of a sudden things changed radically and I became, as in demand. I was like part of the first team that helped develop LEED. I was one of the first speakers at the Living Building Challenge. And so the progression of this company went from natural landscapes and ecology and restoration to the built environment. And it was a natural progression for us to begin to work within the fields of architecture and landscape architecture. Yeah. In which case I had done the massive living roof for the Vancouver Convention Center with Ray Cole and Peter Busby, like, a real groundbreaking, large scale, sustainable design around water reuse and habitat on the rooftop.
Yeah.
From there, I did the Academy of Sciences with Renzo Piano. Did the concept plan for the Trans Bay or the Salesforce terminal, putting a park on top of structure. And I became really fascinated with how we could restore the urban world, the natural processes around hydrology, around habitat, and then create these green spaces within the city that weren't otherwise available.
Yeah.
And that really is the backstory on how the company evolved its different disciplines. I also have a real interest in tangible things, not just the design or the conceptualization or the technical writing. So we have our own nursery, and I've always said, I know how plants perform because I have 1,500 different species at my nursery, and
Yeah.
and we've grown large scale projects like the 5 million plants for the Apple campus,
Yeah.
and the focus of the nursery is primarily indigenous plants, site specific indigenous plants. We do grow cultivars and ornamentals under contract. Often what we see now is these big, large corporate campuses, the landscape architecture has gotten to a whole new level,
Sure.
where it's like a botanic garden, an
Yeah.
expression of just incredible beauty and lush, and then couple that with these drivers around sustainability, they've become very fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And then also part of that is we have a small construction company as well. So we design, build, and grow. All of these things that are at different scales. Of course, we do large scale civic and commercial work with our design team, but we also work on a residential scale. We just finished a residence in San Diego, a lovely remodel of a home down there. Our areas of interest and our demographics shifted somewhat after COVID. I had been working in these grand projects in Dubai or Riyadh or Hangzhou, China, with Renzo Piano, a super block. We grew tea on 10 acres of rooftop, big plazas.
Yeah.
I'm just finishing up the Croton water treatment plant in New York City. I've been on that project for 17 years. But now it seems like the demographic, we're really West Coast. We're in that migratory
I see.
pathway from Vancouver down to Tijuana and even down into Baja, which is, floristic. I have studied the floristics of most of the Western United States and then specialize in other fields and desert landscapes. But,
Yeah.
I really know the flora and the plant material from the West Coast.
Yeah. I'm curious in your work, the ecological work that you've done, especially early on, was there any, I know you had a lot of support from, on the quote unquote development side, but were there any pushback or anything, any barriers that you had to come across when implementing some of these ideas on the municipality side? So state
Yeah,
regulations, anything like that?
absolutely. That's a
Yeah.
really, really fine question. And that I'll give you a good example is I sat down with Cesar Pelle when we were going after the transit. It was called the Trans Bay Terminal, the
Yeah.
big park in San Francisco. And I had done the concept plan for that and it was focused on reuse of wastewater.
Okay.
So a combination of both, given that water is our most precious resource, that I often ask the question, why are we flushing toilets with potable water?
Right. Yeah.
And so the pictograms that I had made, the storyboards for the competition, and we won the competition
Yeah.
and we were selected. And now we're going to engage in the drawings and the PUC Public Works in San Francisco said, well, this water reuse is a great idea, Paul, but it's against the law. We don't currently have the design standards, the health and safety standards in place here in San Francisco to do these kinds of reuse,
Yeah.
reclaim, treatment trains. Now, we did it on Vancouver Convention Center where the lavatory water was collected, treated in a biodigester, and all of that water went onto the roof. It was diverted from the sanitary sewer. So it wasn't, like I have done some things that are a little on, on that edge.
Yeah, sure.
But, the technology was there. We knew what we could do, but it took about 6 years and that was our key focus. And the landscape design itself, those concepts I had of a meandering stream and, creating these atlas. I worked with Peter Walker and Peter Walker took over the landscape architecture. And this is really an interesting collaboration where we have this form and function, and there's always this tussle between the
Sure.
two. And so I was really focused on that project of overcoming and how do we uh, create a regulatory world where we can get these projects permitted. And so
Right.
went through a lot of design criteria for health and safety and double, redundancy in terms of health and safety. We took on the treatment trains for many different projects about how to use stormwater or gray water in the urban world. And now in San Francisco, they're offering grant monies to commercial projects. It's like it's codified now. I kind of, I need a new assignment. We got through that, and it was one of those. We worked with great people, by the way. Like A10 was on that. Good engineers and good people. That and the role in the landscape architecture side was we have to create the demand values. We have to do the engineering alongside those engineers. So that's a technical kind of collaboration that really, in my mind, has always been very gratifying. And especially when you're doing something at that scale that hasn't been done, before. And it could have the potential to really, move the needle in terms of
Yeah.
sustainable
That was
design.
kind of my follow-up question would be is do you see that process and the implementation as precedent for other districts, right? Other municipalities that can just kind of take that and incorporate into the work that they're doing. Because I know that is a big um there's been a lot of talk about implementing the exact same things that you've been talking about that you've worked on. It does seem that could easily translate over to everywhere, right? Anyone that's looking to do that type of work.
It has. It
Yeah,
absolutely has. Now, it's not without its challenges,
sure.
even with stormwater in California, it takes a lot of real estate to store water in a tank.
Yeah,
With gray water, that water that you do collect has to be discharged every 24 hours
yeah,
or used. And so this reuse cycle, there's some regulation, there's some just the monetary issue that, I always say never go to a developer and say we can save the world together. We can save the world plus increase your bottom line
right.
and conserve water.
Yeah,
And it's worked on a few projects. That Sunset Living Well, for example, I found a a nuisance water. They called it a spring in the parking in a
okay.
crack concrete. They're paying, money a lot of money to pump that water out.
Yeah,
And so what we did, we found through geotechnical studies, it was actually an underground spring with really good water.
yeah,
We harvested that water, and so the landscape and the living wall is zero potable water. That was a great example of just using what we consider waste to the benefit.
right.
But however, when I went to say, well, we need a storage tank, they were looking at a single parking space in the basement worth like up to $30,000 a year in revenue. And so part of this work that we have done around sustainability is to develop the business case for it. So
Okay.
that if we, and I, if we can make it work financially, we can, then it really, the sustainability part of this is a big deal. And that's when that adoption, it's not just the early adopters, the people that are willing to take that risk and try these things. But
Yeah.
when it really pays off and it works ecologically, and we get all those stacked functions, we can improve habitat for certain local birds or butterflies, bees.
Yeah.
We can improve the quality of people's lives. This is why it's so fascinating to me, is this idea of landscape architecture, and what we do at a certain place has such a multifaceted way in which we can inform that practice.
Yeah.
There's a ways to go about it.
Yeah. There's a million different things that can become result of that work that you do, right? Like you mentioned, that the naturally creating a habitat for all these different species, and maintaining that control of the water and how that's treated on site is a huge plus, and over time that's just it's going to pay out, multiple times over. um Switching tracks a little bit, Paul, the Rana design, you mentioned there's different elements to it, right? There's the construction, the design, the plan, obviously the municipality work, and some of the you have a nursery. How big of a company is Rana, and what are some of the maybe in your day to day? Do you have uh, a hand in each one of these different portions of it? Are you more in the
For
planning
the
side? Yeah,
uh, for the last 17 years, my wife Marta Kephart is the CEO of the company.
gotcha.
And the day to day and the administration, I'm not as involved in as I was during the founding years or
Sure.
the grow up years of the company.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I'm really here as an advisor and a designer. I'm often at the front end, that ideation.
Yeah.
Um, we don't market a lot because I've got great uh, relationships that I just love collaboration. I
Yeah.
love the people I work with. So I focus a lot on that.
Yeah.
As you can see, I'm kind of a storyteller. I like to talk about the work that we do. I'm passionate about the work. I love to talk about the people that work here too,
Mhm.
because in my mind, if you look at our playlist, and it's a great
Yeah,
playlist. You look at
absolutely.
the work that we've done, it's always about the people that have been here, and giving them the opportunity for growth professionally, giving them the opportunity to be really passionate and creative about their work. So that's kind of how the day to day goes. Marta, I mean, she really is a good businesswoman. The business side of this
Yeah.
endeavor, as you well know, and most other landscape architects and architects in the professional A&E services business, it can be tough. It's not for the faint of heart, and but she's done a wonderful job around that. I think that's also the reason that we diversified.
Mhm.
Not only was the diversification a result of my personal interests and my own career path, being a licensed contractor, installing work.
Yeah.
I mean, the first start was as a botanist. I grew the plants in a nursery, and particularly rare and endangered plants or specialized plants that had not been introduced to the trade yet. And so these were all kind of passion things that I had done in addition to my art.
Yeah.
And so now that's how it evolved, and it kind of just kept growing and maturing from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you see Rana going, you know, down the line? You mentioned how things have changed slightly since COVID, or that kind of brought up a change. Is it more continuing more of that? Do you plan on switching it up a little bit back to what you were doing prior? What's the
Well,
outlook for Rana design?
I'll tell you um, I'm just enjoying myself so
Yeah.
much that even on like a smaller residential projects, there's always opportunity for relationships, opportunity to do something really interesting, very cool. I'll give
Yeah.
you an example. It's a small project up in Humboldt is with a woman that owns her own veterinarian practice. And I got to know a local architect there, Cash, and she had the idea of a veterinarian care facility that had no angles and no right angles and no straight lines. So
Okay.
it's based on the building is the Fibonacci sequence. It's called
Wow.
Healing Spirit. And we're changing the way in which it's non-clinical. I mean, it is a medical
Sure.
facility, but we're trying to get away from that, taking into account biophilic design, taking a nature-based design, looking at the sustainability, but really focusing in on the environment. I
Yeah.
always say this to the folks that work here, when you show me what the project will look like, I don't want to see it from afar. I want to see it through the eyes of the people or the pets that are there.
Yeah.
That's a smaller project, but it just works on so many levels for us.
Yeah.
And I
No.
see us really, we've done different, if you look back, we've done healthcare and hospitals, and we've done museums.
Mhm.
Interpretation is something we're really keen on, the museum or the natural native center, the parks, or these kinds that we've finished the Francisco Park. When do you ever, after 13 years and numerous great designers and architects, we took that on and finished the design, grew all the plants, and installed the whole park
Yeah.
right in the heart of, San Francisco, and just a lovely project. So I see the company, continuing along that kind of trajectory. I
Yeah.
don't plan on retiring or, changing it up. I do more drawing and sketching maybe now. I have a little more discretionary time, but
Sure.
I really love the work that we do, and I love the people that I work with. So
Yeah. No,
that's what
it's really nice work. Anybody goes to your website, they can kind of take a look and get an idea of the not only the work itself, but just the overall sense of I think the sense of the company that is portrayed on the website itself. Get a really good idea of what you're providing, not just on the landscape architecture side of the things, but like you're the whole holistic practice as a whole, right? Everything that ties into it, the planning, the construction, the everything that you've described here. Um, excuse me. Um, but and you're so Rana Design, there you're based out of Carmel,
Mhm.
California, right? How long is that? Have you always been there? Is that where you started?
Yeah, like I say, I started in Big Sur
Mm,
down in the wilderness area, and then the first phase of the company was located at Elkhorn Slough for a little while. The nursery was there, and then we went out to Rana Creek Ranch, and I
yeah,
described that earlier, 14,000-acre ranch in outer Carmel Valley,
gotcha.
and that's where we were incorporated in 1997, I believe, on April
Okay.
Fool's Day. And the owner of the property, Mike, he really had an interest in this work as well.
Yeah.
And so and that's when we really got into more technology because of his interest in software. And we really got adept at GIS and
Okay.
modeling and
Which I would imagine are big tools that you use pretty often, right?
we
For
do
your
now.
the work that
We,
the program you're
we
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, we use bin models and Rhino,
Okay.
and we use Lumion for graphic presentations.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I'm really big on graphic and drawing and sketches, and I have a young woman that works for me that has her degree in architecture. She's studying to be an architect and really talented with the Lumion and the kind of computer generated graphic
Yeah.
design and modeling. She's never done any hand sketches as a
Yeah.
and so it's really quite and I just think that our whole schematic level, early schematic design has gone, from these kind of redundant site plans and planting layouts to these Lumion models where the clients, they'd say, yeah, I can see it, I can
Yeah.
walk through it, I
Yeah.
can be in it. And I see that those kind of technological advances have really helped the company and helped the profession.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Kind of jumping on a little bit of that. Um, a lot of our listeners are students in the landscape architecture field, right? Or they're just coming out, they're joining the workforce. Um, you have a very impressive history and the company itself. Do you have any words of advice to someone coming into the industry now, that you can kind of share and give to anybody listening out there?
well, find your passion and stick with it. I think is probably the
Yeah.
hardest thing for a young person because there is so much opportunity. And and we're only 43, 45 people, we'll get up to 50 people. That's everything. Or so while we're a small company, we take on two summer interns every year and we
Okay.
give people a chance to see how they fit and if they want to join or but it gives them an opportunity to kind of find what they like. And I think that, for me, I was passionate about nature and native plants and habitat and
Yeah.
wildlife. And so ecology was my main focus. And I did everything I could to practice ecology. And you see it's embedded in the work that we do. And
Yeah.
my advice to younger folks is like, you know, find your passion and your true north, and then stick with it. And and some wise words of my 93-year-old mother: "Don't give up for a minute,"
Yeah. Yeah. It's good
because
advice.
there'll be plenty of obstacles and challenges along the way. That is for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm sure a lot of people can relate with that, the sentiment. Paul, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the podcast. I know we got off to a rocky start a little bit, but we were able to connect and get this going. Where can people, I'll direct people to the website. Is there
Yeah,
any other ways that people can connect with either yourself or Rana Design?
yeah. You can always go right to the website. You can call the office. You can reach me at paul@ranacreekdesign.com. Happy to talk to people of interest and thank you too. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I'd like to get
Of
to know
course.
you and your practice
I
better.
appreciate that.
I'd
Yeah.
like to be on the other side of the discussion and ask some questions
Oh
too.
yeah, of course. Anytime, Paul. Well, thank you.